In this video, we're covering 3 ways to recruit new volunteers. Let's do it.
Hi, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because we believe a better world needs healthier nonprofits. Today, we are super excited to talk about 3 ways to recruit new volunteers because getting new volunteers in your organization is highly, highly, highly important. If you currently have volunteers, this is something that we always need to be remembering because sometimes it gets easy to say, I already have people, I'm doing pretty good, and we forget that the thing that brings our organization to the next level or even allows us to maintain long-term is to get more people in.
You might be thinking too, on the other side, you might be going, I need new volunteers. This is why I'm here. And we're going to be covering that. And these things will be things that you probably may not have thought of. And so kind of just help you spin the gears a little bit different, think a little bit of a different way to get some new volunteers in your organization. And lastly, if you haven't used volunteers before in your nonprofit, don't write it off. Don't think, we don't really need volunteers. There's always a way to start to involve some other people in what's happening in the nonprofit. And that's going to grow the nonprofit in lots of great ways, not just getting some volunteer help, but this is going to help get the word out. This is going to help get more people passionate about what your nonprofit does. It's also going to help increase donations over time if you do it right. So let's talk about these 3 ways. First of all, make the volunteer experience a 10 out of 10. Jinx. For real though, make the volunteer experience something that people walk away from after having volunteered with your organization going, that was the highlight of my month. That was the highlight of my year. If they walk out of there thinking that about the volunteer experience, they're going to invite other people to come volunteer with them, and you're not going to have to do any recruiting.
And this is one of those things that when we look at getting new volunteers, it's really easy to look for new volunteer positions. How can we get more people involved? How can we start a new team? But really, one of the most effective ways that we can do this is actually just by making the current volunteer experience so good that people want to talk about it. They want to share about it. They feel great about it. Which sometimes, in a lot of things with nonprofits, you don't want to spend a ton of time trying to just keep improving and improving and improving because at some point you just have to go do it. But this is one of those things that if you can start by looking at your current volunteer experience and figuring out how to make that a 10 out of 10 before duplicating what you're currently doing into other teams, it's a natural way to make all of it work a lot better because you're not trying to recruit people to something that no one wants to be a part of. You're trying to recruit people to something that they truly do enjoy and that they find a lot of value in. Not just that you find value in them doing it, but they find value in it as a part of their schedule and a part of their week.
Right. And the easiest way to do this is to put yourself in their shoes. Think through the idea of, if I was volunteering here, what would make this the best part of my month? Not just that I know that I'm doing something good, but other things like, are we feeding the volunteers? They're here for 6 hours. Are we giving them a little something to eat? Are we encouraging them? Are we making sure that they understand what it is that they're doing so they don't feel unequipped to be able to help? So do they feel trained? Think about all these things because putting together a 10 out of 10 experience for volunteers is a growth strategy for your team. It's not just about making them feel better. It's also a way to grow your volunteer base and grow your organization.
Yeah. Now, number 2, work the network of your current volunteers. When you are looking to grow and find new volunteers, one of the best ways to do it is to learn to effectively network and actually talk to your favorite organizational volunteers right now. Like the people who, when you see them come in, you're like, man, stuff is getting done today. They're going to bring a good energy into this. I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to talk to them. Talk to the people who you really enjoy having on your team and ask who they know that could possibly volunteer once or twice a month or even just a one-time thing because they know people who are similar to themselves. And so that's a great way to find people who are going to be a good fit is go to the people who you currently have volunteering and just asking who they know. Because if you're just constantly calling through your own cell phone list, asking people to volunteer and volunteer and volunteer, you are missing out on one of the greatest resources that is underlooked in nonprofit, and that is the networks of the people who are already committed to your organization.
Right. And don't just put it on the shoulders of the people that you're talking to that are in your organization. Don't say, okay, now it's your job as a volunteer to go and find 5 more. No, it's your job as the organizational leader to help work through their networks with them to figure out who in your life is somebody who's going to find this to be a valuable experience, a fun experience. Especially when you work with networks, it's great because they can come and they can volunteer with their friend, right? So now they know somebody when they come in. They're not just surrounded by a bunch of people they don't know and stuffing envelopes or whatever.
And make this as easy as possible. Invite one of your volunteers to bring a friend with them next time so that they can get to know the organization. Or if they have someone, ask them to send a group text between you and that person, and then do the work of reaching out. A lot of times the people who are great volunteering with us behind the scenes, they're not necessarily comfortable having those conversations with their friends and their family members. And so make it easy for them to want to get people involved. Easiest way to do this, that volunteer experience being 10 out of 10. Second easiest way to do this, look to utilize their network in a way that is helpful to them, is kind to them, and that's going to take good care of the person that they're trusting you with.
Number 3 of the ways to recruit new volunteers is to create an on-ramp volunteer position that has a lot of empty spots. So what we're saying here is like create a volunteer position, figure out how to make a volunteer position for your organization that doesn't require a ton of skill, that doesn't require a big time commitment, and doesn't require a lot of like pre-existing knowledge. You want people to be able to come in, not really need a lot of training, knowing that they're not going to have to give 10 hours a week or something to the team, but they can just kind of dip their toes in. And through that process, you're going to find that it's easier to recruit people onto that team. But then you can start to kind of sort and see who might want to step into some other areas with maybe a little more commitment.
Yeah, we were just recently talking about another volunteer leader who they have the opportunity to get some volunteers in to just stuff envelopes. It doesn't sound glamorous. A lot of people are like, do I really need someone to come in and do that? But for certain organizations, if you have enough mailers going out, that can be a great example of something that doesn't take a lot of training and you can make it consistent. Maybe it becomes like a every other week or a monthly thing where every Wednesday for 2 hours, you have this team that just comes in and they help stuff envelopes for your organization. Mm-hmm. Now, you might be looking at that going like, maybe that would help. But the benefit of this is that it's very little training. And if you just always have the time set aside, then as you have people who are kind of interested in your organization, it's a great way to just say, hey, this is a great way that you can see behind the scenes a little bit, see a little bit more about what the culture here is like, what we do, give you a chance to talk to them and see if they'd be a good fit for your organization. Whatever your on-ramp volunteer position is, it needs to be something that you can virtually invite anyone to. So the minute someone raises their hand even a little bit, you have an easy way for them to come in, get involved, check it out for themselves, and then it also gives you a chance to see where they might be a good fit. Because it's intimidating. If you find a potentially good volunteer and you say, well, what do you want to help with? They don't know what's going on in your organization. They're not even totally sure what their skills are. If you say, what are you good at? Most people are like, I mean, I can kind of do this thing. And they might know, but they might not be totally sure if it's a good fit. So this is a great way for you to get to know them and for them to feel safe and comfortable, just kind of checking it out and seeing if it might work.
So let's put this into the practical a little bit and just run through a typical scenario. We brought up the letter stuffing, the envelope stuffing example. I think let's just kind of play this one out a little bit. But before we do that, I do want to touch on one thing. Don't write off a volunteer position because it's something you don't like doing.
Yes.
Specifically, when we're talking about this envelope stuffing today. But it's totally front of mind for me because I'm thinking about this team that had elderly people that would get together and they loved stuffing the envelopes. And this person was like, yeah, and I give them tea and we donuts and like that kind of stuff, just kind of make it an event. And the people love coming together and talking and stuffing envelopes together and they make it a thing. That's a really great example of like, I don't like stuffing envelopes, but people enjoy that kind of thing. Remember that some things that you hate to do, some people love to do, and some things that people hate to do, you love to do. And it's okay to figure out who is who and who goes with what.
And with something like that, the value there isn't in the fact that they're helping your organization. The value is that you're giving them a chance to have community with other people. And that is highly valuable. And so understanding what your volunteers might be looking for and how the volunteer position can do more than simply serve your organization. You really are opening up simple positions to allow people to get something that they might not be able to get in any other area of their lives. especially if they're in a situation where they just don't know a lot of people and they just want to have a time once a week where they can sit in a room and just be surrounded by a few other people and have some conversation with. That's highly valuable. And a lot of times, as a nonprofit leader, you are so surrounded by people that you undervalue what that is in someone else's life.
So let's play this out with an example here. Feeding the homeless.
Okay.
Okay. How can we take feeding the homeless and say, you know what, we have some grant money, we have some different things, but we want to start using volunteers better to be a part of what we're doing to feed the homeless in our city. Okay. So where would you start with that?
I would look at a position that isn't going out and actually talking to the people who are homeless or being directly on the streets. I might look at a position that, let's say you regularly make ham and cheese sandwiches.
I was just going to say.
I would have an open thing that's every Saturday morning from 9 to 11, we make ham and cheese sandwiches. And that is the way that people get involved. Because that'll give you a chance to get to know them, work side by side with them, and figure out what other parts of the process they might be interested in. And it's a very insulated environment where some people just aren't comfortable going up to people they've never met before and engaging in conversation, even if it's to hand someone food. And so giving them a position where they're going to be surrounded by people who they feel like they can just be comfortable with, and that they're going to get the training that's needed for a not highly trained position. That's what I would go for.
Right. And that's a great example of something that like people could bring their kids to, and it could be a fun thing if you make it fun. So then I would start to work the network, right? I would talk to who are the volunteers that we currently have working in our Feed the Homeless nonprofit. Yep. Maybe these people who have gone out into the streets to actually hand out the food before, but we've never done like a ham and cheese sandwich making day before. I would talk to them and say, hey, we're going to start doing this thing. Once a month, we're going to get together and we're going to actually make ham and cheese sandwiches to be able to hand out that night. So what I want you guys to do is put together a list of like 10 people that you think would like to come and hang out for that sandwich day. And then I want you to help me get in touch with them so I can personally invite them to come help us make sandwiches for the homeless.
Yeah. And a lot of times the way I would broach part of this conversation is we are so thankful that you are here and you do such a good job talking to the people that we're trying to help. We also know that you probably have friends who love the idea of it, but don't want to be on the streets because they're not quite sure how those interactions would go. They're not sure what to say. They might just be a little bit uncomfortable, but they've expressed interest in what you're doing. This is a great way for them to just get their feet just a little bit wet and kind of see what it's like behind the scenes a little bit. Because you're telling the people then, you're telling your current volunteers, I value what you do, while also recognizing that different people have different comfort levels, different skills, and different abilities, and allowing them to say, even if someone isn't exactly like me, there's still space for them here within this organization.
Excellent. And then you would start to say, okay, we're going to start doing this ham and cheese sandwich making party, so we better make it a 10 out of 10 experience for the volunteers who are going to be here. We need to make sure that there's music playing. We want to make sure that we got all the ingredients. We want to make sure that it's comfortable and not like too cold or too hot.
And efficient.
Yeah, some people will get really upset if it's not organized well, especially if it's supposed to be like an assembly line situation.
Yep. There's an organization.
I know I would. I'd be like, ah!
Yeah. I'd be like, what are we doing? There's an organization in our area that packs meals that actually get shipped to other countries so people can have food when they need it. And they have everything in an assembly line, and people get competitive. They're like, come on, let's get it going. And people are very, very much on top of it.
It's a part, yeah.
And so
points.
If you're, there's points, there's like friendly competition. But if you're doing anything with an assembly line, make sure that either it's highly efficient and you're going for fun in that kind of atmosphere, or it's efficient enough that people aren't going to be frustrated, but you're giving enough time for community to happen. You need to know what your volunteers value and make that experience 10 out of 10. And there are a couple different ways that can look depending on who it is that you're working with.
Yeah, give them treats. You know, make sure that you have like cocoa or, I mean, I keep imagining cold because we're here in Minnesota and right now it's very cold outside. So I'm imagining cold volunteers trying to make sandwiches, but making sure that, you know, there's refreshments for them and a way for them to hang out and just enjoy the time as well as help out. And that can be a great opportunity for you to get to know some of these people who are showing up for the first time, find out who they know, like how did you hear about us? I mean, that kind of stuff.
And then find out what else they might be interested in, because they might just be one time at that sandwich making event, but they could be someone who'd be really great at helping behind the scenes in more of an administrative role. They might be someone who's like, yeah, I'm making the sandwiches, but I'm excited to get out there. I want to go talk to people. I want to
Hmm.
go encourage people. It really gives you a chance to see who they are. That way, as you move them into different areas of your organization, you're not accidentally lining them up to hate their volunteer role, because sometimes that
Right.
happens when we just don't know people super well. It's like, hey, let's try this over here. And it's really nice if the first time that you do that, you're at least going down the right path. It might not be the perfect fit, but it's really hard when a volunteer comes to you and says, man, that is the worst thing I've ever done. And so having a great, simple, shallow end of the pool on ramp position just makes it a little bit easier so that hopefully you're skipping those first couple of volunteer roles that may not be a great fit.
So you're thinking to yourself, sweet, I've got a new way to get some volunteers into my organization. I want to start building some strength into our organization and making a healthy team, running a healthy team. We've actually got a video called 6 Strategies to a Healthy Team we think you'd enjoy. Go ahead and click on that, and we'll see you over there.